This is a budget hearing for law. Councilor Green, and I'm joined by Councilor Hogan, Council President Hudson, Councilor Driscoll, Councilor Bay, Councilor Allen, and Councilor Paniagua. So Kristen, I'll turn it over to you to present the budget.
Great. So I thought I would take this opportunity to just go over kind of an overview of our department. I know you've heard, a number of you have heard this in past years, but I'll do it again. Go over the budget changes, and if you then at that point, I'm happy to get into some of the details about our work, some of the things we've done in the past year, anything you want to cover. I have a lot prepared, but I don't know how much detail you want to get into. Just in terms of the department, we are total of about 30 employees. We're divided into 4 units, essentially: litigation, claims, housing, and transactional. And then we have a few that sort of are, support staff, like myself, the receptionist, my secretary. In terms of the breakdown, in our litigation unit right now, we have 6 attorneys and 1 paralegal. So that's one of our bigger groups. Claims is really just one person who is that's really the city's insurance department. She takes in our property damage claims and reviews them, deals with insurance companies, decides whether claims should be paid out or denied, with attorney oversight. The housing unit is the next unit that many of you are familiar with. We have 4 attorneys there right now, which is, larger than it had been in past years. 1 paralegal. The collections folks fall under that umbrella as well. So we have 1 legal collections manager who collects on our legal judgments, and a legal secretary to support her. Finally is our umbrella category of transactional. That's kind of everything else, which is 8 and 8.5 attorneys. We do have a part-time attorney. So that's really kind of everything else. So contract drafting, ordinance drafting, assessment, real estate, labor relations and employment, general advice and projects, FOIL, just everything else. So that's why that's probably the biggest group. So that's 8.5 attorneys and then 4 support staff. We have a FOIL paralegal, a bankruptcy paralegal, because it's sort of interesting, something that I didn't realize before I was here, that, whenever anyone in our community or anyone who does business with us files bankruptcy, there's a lot of departments in the city that need to know about that. So we deal with that. A vacant legal secretary job position right now to support the attorneys, and a foreclosure analyst, because the land bank work now falls underneath law completely. So that foreclosure person who used to be in finance is in that group. So that's really kind of the overview of our structure. So really what this adds up to is about 20 attorneys and 11 support staff. That's how it breaks down. If you look at the budget that was the budget book, it'll give you a number of 28, and the reason why it's a little bit higher, that is SURA. So we do have a few employees on SURA still, but far fewer than when I started. The budget includes some new positions. There's I think one significant one is a part-time investigator, and I'm really excited about this. The law department has not had an investigator in many years, and this person will likely be retired law enforcement and will do really 3 things for us. One is process serving. So right now we pay an outside process server to serve our legal papers. That typically happens out of our housing unit when we're bringing petitions in state court against property owners. We need to properly serve them under the law. So we can have someone internally do that. We will still need some budget for an outside process server because of out-of-town service. We do have a lot of LLCs that we sue who are not located in central New York. That's the first thing the person will do. The second thing is they'll investigate. So our litigators really need some investigation support to do some of the background on some of our cases. I mean, we have a number of personal injury cases where we'd like to take a look at, the daily activities of the plaintiff. And so that person can do that for us instead of having to hire an outside private investigator. There will be some carryover investigator expenses because we have some pending cases right now that we have engaged investigators. We'd like to close out those contracts and keep some continuity on those cases. The third thing relates to residency, which I know was a topic earlier this week. And in the event we get a referral to the personnel department that someone believes that someone's not meeting the residency requirements, we would task this person with doing an investigation because they would have the tools to actually get out on the road and try to collect evidence on that. So that's, I think, a significant new position for the city. In addition, we're going to beef up the FOIL function under this new budget. We are way behind. When I talk about the projects that we've worked on this year, maybe I'll jump to that right now on this particular topic. The repeal of 50A of the Civil Rights Law was a huge unfunded mandate for this law department and for FOIL offices across the state. It is a huge lift to respond to the many requests. We get requests from the press, from, open media, or, just open public information entities, defense attorneys, just interested parties, and we're behind. We're very behind, and I'm not happy with how behind we are, and it's just a pure matter of capacity. So I've asked for 1.5 headcount in this budget for that purpose. And what we'll do, and let me just back up, even before 50A was repealed, we were way behind on FOILs just because people use the FOIL function more than they ever have before. People, I review the mail that comes in the law department every day, and it's piles of FOILs every day. It's unbelievable. So what we're going to do is have 2 paralegals. One will be focused on all Syracuse Police Department FOILs, and one will be focused on everything else. Because in addition to the requests for disciplinary files, we get requests for an unbelievable number of requests for police reports, as you might guess, for insurance purposes, for whatever purpose. And those are extremely labor intensive. It requires a review to do redaction. We're not going to release people's private information. Police reports have a lot of private information in them, like birth dates and such. So anyway, it's just really labor intensive. So we'll have 1 SPD FOIL paralegal, 1 other FOIL paralegal. The 0.5 is really a catch up. I don't really anticipate needing that beyond this fiscal year. My thought was to have someone come in and really just help us get caught up for 6 months. And then I think on a moving forward basis, once we're caught up, the 2 people could really do a good job. And I think we'll improve our performance relative to this important, transparency function for the city. Right now, I know that there's people out there that are unhappy that it takes months to get a document. They don't understand, like, why it's so easy. You just pull it. It's just really a volume exercise that we might have one FOIL that only takes 10 minutes to grab, but it's in line behind, a 200-page police report that we're reviewing. So really looking forward to speeding that up this year now that we have some more resources. Okay, so that's the added positions. If you look at the numbers, there is an increase on the salary line. That is related to the new positions I just talked about. There's some modest COLA increases that we haven't had in a long time. A couple of equity adjustments because people kind of fell out of a line as we bring new people in an attempt to be slightly more competitive. People who have been here for a while fall behind. So, and actually, if you look at that increase, a huge amount of it, and I'm sure you're hearing this from every department, is the elimination of the 4% vacancy adjustment. So when they eliminated the 4% vacancy adjustment, that was a $60,000 change in our budget. The professional services line is up a little over $100,000. This is a really big catch-all. As you're aware, it includes a SURA payroll, which is mostly staying flat. It includes all of our litigation services. So our court reporters, our process servers, our consultants, for example, if we're in a personal injury case and we need to perform an independent medical exam of the plaintiff, those services, those doctors can be expensive. Mediators, arbitrators, all of those things fall under that line, as well as our outside attorneys. That's the biggest chunk of it, of course. So we're requesting an increase on that outside counsel line of $120,000. And if you look at our projected for this year, it's really high, and I want to address that. During the past year, it wasn't really this fiscal year, it happened at FY20. We hit a really low point in our staffing in our litigation unit. We lost all kinds of people all at once, and we were left with like 2 people staring at each other, like, what are we going to do with these 100 cases? So we, in a really urgent situation, had to outsource some cases that normally we wouldn't. And so it's the legacy of that to a large extent, because once you move a case out to an outside attorney and they dig sink their teeth into it, it doesn't make sense. It's not good for the city's litigation position to shift it back. When you're shifting representation back and forth, it's not good for the defense. So we decided to let those cases live through their natural life cycle. We're seeing them one by one close out, either through a successful motion or a settlement or something like that. So we anticipate things will come down a bit, but frankly, we handle a lot of litigation, and I actually have some data if you're interested. I'll get to that to the end actually, but we have about 100 cases. So we have about 100 cases, and like I mentioned, 6 attorneys. 6 attorneys can't handle 100 cases, not with the types of some of the cases that we have. So, I try to keep a good balance between the cases that we handle in-house and those that require really some outside expertise. Often depends on the nature of the claim, the sort of the significance of the claim, right? Is this a multi-million-dollar potential problem, that we really want to put the best, not that our attorneys aren't great and the best, but if, there's a deeper bench at our law firms, I think everyone can acknowledge. So anyway, so that's what's going on. And so I hope you'll support that. Side note, we are going to need a mid-year transfer because of that increased expenditure on outside counsel this year. So that'll be coming after this budget process is done. Just a quick overview of other things. I just wanted to highlight kind of some of the work that we've been doing. Even though you think, it was COVID, so courts were closed, maybe law wasn't busy, that couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, we were extraordinarily busy this year. COVID had a direct impact on our work. Just as lawyers, we were the ones advising on local changes in state, not local law, but state and federal law, particularly in the employment arena. There was a lot of work in advising our personnel department on, a number of new laws. At some point, the county asked us to help with ticketing of executive order violations. So we had to stand up a whole unit in the law department to ticket. So that involved designing ticket forms, setting up some form of due process, just really handling that whole process. We haven't issued a ton of COVID tickets, but we have issued some at $1,000 a piece. And, that took some significant legal work to get that up and to keep that running. Police reform is the obvious one. The law department's played an integral role in that from the start, really advising the police department, on various issues, very intimately involved in a lot of the policy rewriting that's occurred, such as the use of force policy and the body-worn camera policy, and just really all the items in the executive order, the mayor's executive order and the governor's executive order. We've been very much involved, so that's been very busy. I already mentioned the repeal of 50A being a huge amount of work for our department. Housing, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about housing. That's one area that it was a little quiet last year because the courts were not available to us, and that's when we were shifting work over to the BAA, and so they were taking on more cases. But things are very busy right now, and just want to talk about a particular strategy that we had started talking about pre-COVID, kind of stalled a bit mid-COVID, but started back up at the beginning of this calendar year before the spotlight on Skyline. Actually, we were meeting to deploy what we're now calling the swarm strategy, which I've talked about in other forums. And so I don't think I need to go into a lot of detail here about how we're going to be focusing on the worst property owners. But that's, so that's going to be kind of just a new approach, more work, better, but more efficient work, I think, in that we're going to, hopefully tackle some of the biggest problems by just being more strategic. We have, in terms of those four attorneys in housing, I want to mention that one of them was actually hired under a grant by the state related to the zombie law. I don't know if all of you are familiar with that, but the zombie law deals with properties where an owner walks away because they think they're going to be foreclosed. They're way behind on their mortgage, but the bank doesn't do their part. They don't complete the process. It's sort of in legal limbo. And so there's a law that allows municipalities to really hold those banks accountable. They have a legal obligation, even though they haven't technically foreclosed and taken ownership, they have a legal obligation to take care of those properties. So we brought in a full-time attorney under a grant to focus just on that. And we thought he'd be in court quite a bit. And what actually happened is once we started a process of sending strong letters from an attorney, we got some nice compliance in that area. And so I was really pleased. That's Finny Raju, who was doing that work. I shouldn't say was. He's on military leave right now for 4 months. So a bit of a pause. We're trying to keep it going while he's gone. But once that zombies grant runs out, we do want to continue. We've built into the budget so that we can still have him remain beyond the grant. Not just to continue that, but I actually, what I'd like to see is that he also get a little bit more involved in the main work of the housing unit, which will result in sort of a net growth of our capacity over there. I know that's something that means a lot to a lot of counselors and to our entire community to have, a lot of effort over there. So him shifting to not just be focusing on zombies will be really good when he gets back, when that grant runs out. While we're being paid under the grant, it's not appropriate for him to be doing a lot of that other work, but it will become more appropriate after the grant runs out. A couple more things. I just want to acknowledge, in terms of our ordinance drafting, it's been, it was a busy year. You're well aware of the work that, Catherine Carnreich does and Joe Barry. They do great work. There's a couple of big ones that, really put forward by the council this year that they were quite involved with, redistricting and lead abatement. That took a lot of work from a drafting perspective. And so that was a big accomplishment for the council, but also for the law department, I think, this year. The other thing I wanted to say is that we have a paralegal who has been increasing focus on affirmative claims. So we talk a lot about the city being hit with claims, getting sued. We really placed a focus this year on the other direction, right? So who owes us money? And our paralegal in that area, Mary Kay Sullivan, has been just fantastic and really putting a lot of effort into that. I'm actually checking my email to see. She was going to send me some numbers. I'll follow up with those after. But she has been bringing claims against individuals who damage city property. And as I mentioned earlier, I review all the mail that comes through. We get a lot of checks now from insurance companies, and they add up. They're usually a few $1,000s. You hit a fire hydrant, you hit a guardrail that's ours, you hit a street sign. I mean, you see street signs down from traffic accidents a lot. We own those. We should get reimbursed by that insurance company, and that's what we're doing now. So I'm proud of that effort to help on the revenue side. We're not very heavy on the revenue side, but we're trying. That's really about it. The only other thing I had was before questions, of course, was I did have a couple slides kind of showing the breakdown of our litigation this year. If you'll indulge me, if you're interested, I'll do that. Okay, I just gotta share my screen. And I want to thank, thank Todd Long, who took over the leadership of litigation this year, for really doing a great job with our data that in past budget years, I haven't been able to quickly put my finger on things. And we've really come a long way thanks to our current team and also the case management software that we invested in. So thank you for that. All right, so here, share content. I'm just so excited that we actually have this data that I just can't resist not showing it. So let's see here. So you can see it. Do you see a pie chart right now? Yes. Okay. So just a couple things. So just wanted to show that if we look over fiscal year 21, it's not quite over, but our litigation group has been handling about 100 lawsuits, interestingly. And this is the breakdown. You'll see what at first glance, it looks like civil rights is the biggest. But if you actually combined the other side of personal injury, motor vehicle personal injury, and property damage, that's really a huge part of what we do. So we really spend in a way, kind of like half our time in federal court on civil rights type things and half our time in state court on those types of car accidents, trips and falls, tripped over a pothole, things like that. Everything else is really miscellaneous in terms of we have a couple employment cases, a couple, one really, really big environmental case, and then just some miscellaneous other cases. So that's kind of how things break down in terms of the nature of the claim. I also thought it's interesting to look at the department involved. And not surprising, our biggest client is the police department. But the DPW has quite a few cases. Those are mostly, the personal injury cases related to our infrastructure. And then the rest of the departments, a couple cases each, kind of miscellaneous things over there. And then just to break it down a little bit further, if we look, I wanted to break down both DPW and police to show you the types of cases. Under DPW, as I mentioned, it's really a lot of personal injury cases. So we had a settlement that you're going to be voting on. That's actually kind of miscellaneous, I think, because I don't remember what department we put that one into. But my point being that these are the types of cases that we look at, from DPW. And under police, where'd my labels go? Darn it! Oh dear, there it goes. Sorry. I think let's look at it here. Civil rights is the biggest. And then we have some employment cases, Article 78, which are kind of a mishmash of things. That's just a type of proceeding in state court, and some property damage cases. I think this one is, Todd, can you speak up if you know? Because I don't know what happened.
I don't know for certain, but I believe that might be motor vehicle related.
Yes, the orange one, the orange one is motor vehicle cases. And also the other thing on civil rights is that it looks like it's a mix of, plaintiffs' attorneys bringing action for, civil rights, excessive force or false arrest or things like that. We also have quite a few cases from unrepresented individuals who are incarcerated, who bring claims pretty regularly. And those are sort of a different kind of case in terms of the defense and the different amount of work in some ways. So I'm going to stop sharing that. That's just my really quick overview, just to give you a sense of, our litigation unit, which is just one part, but I know that it's something that is, is a major consideration for the council in terms of, resources. So that's what I have prepared. I'm happy to answer questions.
Kristen, so a lot of the settlements we have to deal with motor vehicle accidents, right? And we often on the council shoot the messenger, which is the law department, that had nothing to do with creating the accident, but you're the ones there saying, oh, we've got to spend $400,000 to do it.
Yeah.
And I think there is somewhat of a diffusion of responsibility where like the managers of DPW or water or something like that, again, like this accident happens and then 3 years later, the city pays out $400,000 and the actions feel like they're removed from the consequences there a little bit. And we have a lot of people in law department, or a lot of time is spent litigating these issues and doing that. So where I'm going with this too, and then when we bring up questions about, what happened to that employee, where the discipline, where the training, you'll get like kind of vague, like, well, we're not sure about the union and we don't really have a process. And so I guess where I'm going with this is, does it make sense to have law, even though it's not really law's job, but to have you guys help develop a proactive accident management from a legal liability standpoint of like, here's what the training should be, just because I feel like if we were to have you help put that in place, it probably saves you time in the long run where you're not dealing on the back end with all the lawsuits. Just because I don't think it's top of
Mhm.
mind. If you're running DPW, you're running around doing many things, you're not going to say,
Mhm.
let's spend
Mhm.
20 hours putting together an accident review
Mhm.
committee that strengthens what we have now or proactive training. I just think it's no one's job, and it should be, and it may make sense to have law focused on it.
I agree. I can remember my first year here, like going down, like being what wanting to know more about this. You know, what is this process after, you know, what can we do to prevent these accidents? And you know, because this litigation where you're not seeing is the claims. I didn't prepare that for today, but there's a lot of like little things, you know, that they don't rise to litigation, but maybe we pay a claim out, or maybe we have a defense, but we've still damaged someone's property, right? And that's not good. So short answer, yes, yes, but I know that there has been an increased investment in safety that I think over time is going to bear fruit. What we're seeing in the litigation now is always 3 to 4 years removed from the actual event. The settlement that you are seeing Monday is from 2015. So I know that there's a safety person that was hired in DPW, and I think that person's maybe moving, but the point is they're somewhere in city government. And I get your point that like whose job is it? So I will, yeah, we can follow up on that and make sure that someone from law has a seat at the table, and make sure that the table gets sat at, you know, to have that conversation about safety from a preventative perspective. On the punitive side, you know, all right, what are we doing after someone actually causes the accident? There are accident review committees that are governed by the collective bargaining agreements that, you know, and there's like, for example, in police, I know that they have a schedule that says if this happens, you know, this is your punishment. I think that in the next round of negotiations this year, you know, we should be taking a look at that accident review committee and in each of the different unions and seeing, is it doing what it's supposed to do? I know like in DPW, both management and unions sit on those committees, but yeah, it needs some focused attention. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, I've heard a couple times of like, well, you're not able to discipline because of the collective bargaining agreement. And I think sometimes the people that are making those determinations are maybe not labor relations experts. And, you know, like to have someone there that does understand that a little better may be helpful too. That maybe there are things that the city can be doing that we're just not doing because maybe not everyone understands exactly what our options are.
Sure, and that actually reminded me of something, Councilor Green. I made I think what I consider to be a very critical hire recently, and it's someone who has some real public sector labor law expertise. She'll be starting in the middle of May, and I'm so excited. Her to-do list is really long already, but she has been the chief negotiator in a number of labor contracts. She has been on the union side, and she worked for a state union organization for a number of years. She has now on the management side, so she knows both sides of the table. I never thought that someone like this would cross my desk at the city, and so I'm really excited. And so, you know, that's something that she can help us on.
Other questions from councilors?
I have a question.
Sure.
So, Kristen, this is Ronnie White. Sorry, I don't have my camera on. But you mentioned something about outside counsel, right? And law firms having a deeper bench. But based on my experience, that's usually just kind of based on more manpower. You know, I know there is some expertise, but a lot of times it's just manpower. So I'm wondering, like, have you considered making up that gap by hiring more attorneys?
Well, I think we've done that. So we do have more attorneys now. And so what I was saying earlier is that some of the cases that are with counsel right now, outside counsel, are there because we didn't have the numbers. And as new cases of those type come in, we're now handling those in-house. In fact, this year, a couple of our hires have real deep trial experience. So for a while I shouldn't say no, that's not fair, but we had kind of a young staff that didn't really have good trial experience, but that's changed. But there are definitely cases where it's not about numbers, it's about expertise, and at the cities, you know, and I hesitate to say this because I have great respect for the attorneys in our department, many of whom are on this call. But let's just be really frank here. I mean, you know, we can't afford an attorney who has put in decades, you know, at a law firm and who has handled some of the most complex litigation and that we really need on some of these cases. So we will always have that need on some of the cases, but on others, I have built up, I think, over this past year, a stronger staff, and I think you're going to see that reflected in long term. It's just one of those indicators that really takes a lot of time to change.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem.
Other
Do
questions?
you have a cost savings of what the investigator is going to be versus the outside investigators?
I did that exercise with our budget analyst, and I don't have them in front of me. Yeah, so I'm not sure off the top of my head, but you know, we kept some money in the investigator line, which is under professional services, like I said, to finish the existing cases. But I can follow up. Julie, do you remember? You probably don't. That's a little unfair. That was like months ago. Okay.
I'm looking for my emails. I'll put it in the chat when I find it.
Thank you. But some of it, Counselor, will be enhanced sort of litigation practices. So we will be able to investigate things that in the past we, you know, maybe should have and couldn't at the time.
I get it, but
Yeah.
getting one on staff instead of getting folks from the outside should be a cost savings. But I do get it, everything you said.
Yeah, for sure.
Kristen, to Counselor White's question, I really don't see where I expected your budget to come in and you'd have more lawyers on staff. I'm looking at it and it says, you know, your bottom line's 28 and 28. I thought I actually thought you were going to, the administration was going to allow you to hire more lawyers. It seems like you don't really have more lawyers unless you didn't have all these positions filled the last fiscal year.
One of the positions was cut in the contingency budget. So that's
So
one
we got
extra.
that back?
We got that back. And yeah.
I mean, I know I'm surprised. I really am, because I think you're, you know, and any of my new colleagues ever been in the law department, you know, pre-pandemic and walked in there, it looks like something out of the 19th century as far as people with piles of paper on their desk. And it looks like the most overworked staff you can imagine in city government. I think it is. And you do the best you can. I think you do have a great staff, but I mean, I'm surprised. I really agree with Councilor White. I expected you'd have 3 or 4 more positions here. And you know, I think we can. You certainly are, in a lot of cases, like I can think of, like with the land bank, you have like one person handling all those seizures and everything else, and transferring to the land bank, and in the end, the city benefits because at the end of everything with the land bank does, we get some tax rolls. I mean, and there's a lot of revenue producing things that you do, and I commend you for getting that person that's tracking down people that owe us money. But I really think I really expected you to have more staff positions here. Do you think that would be? I mean, frankly, you need more staff, don't you, Krista?
Sure. Yeah. You know, I think I'm conditioned. You know, this is my 4th budget, and I think I'm conditioned that, like, to make do with what you have. Like, it's just, you know, I didn't, you know, I didn't ask for.
I think you're so conditioned that you actually, and I'm not a math genius, but on one side you have like, it's really 15 instead of 14. You know, the investigator, paralegal, law clerk, and all that. It adds up to 15. So you got one extra person, I guess, on that side. And I just, a cautionary thing, if the investigator is going to be a a former city police officer, I don't know if I'd be really comfortable with the new contract that he'd be investigating residency for current police officers. So that might be something. Now, as far as the JSCB, there's no money there at all. We don't get any money from anybody regarding the JSCB, all the work Joe Barry, or I don't know if Joe Barry still handles that too, or
He sure
or
does.
what?
He does a tremendous amount of work for the
Yeah.
JSCB. Yeah.
And as far as the school district goes, do our people do any work for the school district? How's that work? No, they have their
No,
own.
they have their own
they're-
council now. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at this, one of the charts I showed you, it shows city school district. Sometimes we still have people who don't understand that there's a difference between the city of Syracuse and the school district, and they'll sue the city of Syracuse for issues at the school district. And just, we can't just be like, no, thank you. Like, we actually still have to like enter an appearance and then like make a motion and explain the difference. And so that's why it shows up in our numbers. It's something we still have to deal with. But
Okay.
for the most part, we don't do legal work for the school district anymore.
Well,
Or the airport anymore. So.
well,
Um,
I really think I'm very surprised that there isn't more positions that you'd be allocated. Because it seems like I talked to the law department, I talked to your people a lot, and I commiserate with the amount of work you had. So not that I can help you out in any way, except just keep on funneling you stuff to help me out with, but that's okay. So thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate the support, Counselor.
Counselor, you talk to everyone a lot, so it's not just a lot of fun. Any other questions from Counselor?
I in a little bit of email I did this morning before this meeting, I think I emailed Counselor Hogan more than anyone.
Any other questions from Counselor? Okay.
The other thing I would say, if Counselor Hogan, if you know anyone who's interested in the investigator position, or anyone here, it doesn't have to be retired SPD. I would like it to be retired law enforcement. It doesn't have to be Syracuse law enforcement. It could be any agency, but they will have to meet the residency requirements. So we'll see. We'll see who we find. We haven't started looking yet until we get this approved.
Quick one, Counselor. I was just curious, Kristen, if just a 50A seems a bit, the unfunded mandate aspect of that seems a little unfair to me. Have we thought about reaching out to state reps for a little extra chunk of change to help deal with that? Is that conceivable? It'll probably be done by the time we reach out to them. As you said, like the main brunt of it is hitting right now, but there might be a reimbursement there. Is that something that we could possibly consider?
Sure. Yeah, I haven't, I'm not sure, I haven't thought of it, but I'll write that down. I was on a call with a bunch of other corp councils from other cities, which is a nice resource that NICOM coordinates, and they're all saying the same thing. I know, at least the bigger jurisdictions, right? The smaller cities don't deal with this at all, but I know like the cities that are similar to Syracuse size are all having the same issue.
Right. There could conceivably be a union there with some of the larger cities reaching out at the same time to say, we've been handed a flood of work here. It'd be nice to help us, cover the capacity level. Just a thought.
Sure.
Other questions?
Counselor Green, may I?
Sure, go ahead, Dana.
No, I just a little levity. Counselor Hogan is probably the only person qualified that could tell us that the law department office looks like something out of the 19th century.
My constituent is laughing harder than anybody. Can you believe that?
I think we need to do our next hearing just a roast of Counselor Hogan. I think that would be, everyone would come for that one. Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll close this down, and our next budget hearing will be at 10 o'clock. So we'll close this one, and thank you, Kristen, for your testimony.
Thanks, counselors. Appreciate it.
Yeah, just want to send a thanks. Thanks, Kristen, Joe Barry, everyone who worked on the redistricting and the lead efforts this year and all the other stuff. You guys have done great work for the council as well as the administration. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.